Hey, welcome everyone. We're a couple minutes early, but grab a cup of coffee and we'll let people join, and we'll get started we'll get started shortly. Hey, welcome everyone. Welcome to another Ecosystem Aces Pro panel. I am really excited about this one. Gosh, we have a incredible lineup of professionals and leaders in partnering, and let's jump in. Welcome everybody, and glad to have you here. So we have a lot of folks joined. I think we have about 300 that have registered from every technology company that you can think of, and technologies, software, services, hardware. We got a little bit of everything that are planned to be joining this morning. So let's jump in. A little bit of housekeeping. So introduce yourself in the chat. I see some chat going here already, so that's fantastic. Add your photo in the profile. We'll be, by the way, please ask questions. Use the chat, and we'll pop up your question in the during the conversation as we get going. Please let's make it interactive. We'll ask your questions during the session. So please just feel free to ask questions. Everything's going to happen in the stage tab, and if you want to share to friends or put it out on LinkedIn, even if people haven't registered, people can watch on LinkedIn or on YouTube with the QR codes that are shown here. So good with the housekeeping, and I wanted to share a couple of things that we have that are recent, some materials that you might be interested in. I've got the QR codes up there as well. So we just launched our WorkSpan co-sell app this week, and actually the press release went out this morning. We had a blog that went up earlier this, I think on Monday. Check that out. There's a link there, and it's tremendous. It's really we're very excited about this, the new sort of streamlined co-sell app for companies to manage their own partner ecosystem. We also have an ebook on co-selling with cloud providers. So everyone's trying to do this. We have integrations with AWS, Microsoft, and Google, and we have been in pilot with Google, and but we're ready to launch, and so that's just exciting news. Don't tell anybody yet because it's not official, but it's coming, and So this ebook is all about co-selling with cloud providers and how to do that. And so we've learned a lot from our customers and are sharing that in that ebook. And then finally, we have an ebook on ecosystem maturity model. So where are you today? It really helps you sort of understand where you need to go, where you want to go, where you want to get to, and what are the next steps that you can do to get yourself to a modern ecosystem model at your company. So download any of those at the QR codes, and we'll put links in the chat as well. Okay, gosh, I am so excited. Like I said earlier, really excited to have this panel join us, and starting with so we have Dana, Vicky, Mark, Monday, and Mike Moore. And Kevin, let's bring everybody in, and I'll do introductions. Hey guys. All right, Mark is in Vegas and was on stage last night, so he's in a stage kind of mode.
I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it.
Come on, Mark. You should have been wearing the jacket.
I'm tempted to. It might come out.
So let me do just a quick round of introductions. Dana is Global Vice President of Alliances, Alliance Partners and Channels at Eightfold. And Eightfold, as you many may know, is an AI solution in the HR tech space and really doing some cool things. And Dana, well, so we have two folks that are based in Boston, Dana and Mike. And
go Cubs.
Oh. Ouch. Dana is, gosh, been with Eightfold, and previous to that, Dana, you were at Deloitte for 5 years, and you're sort of just like all the big brands. You've hit all the big brands: VMware, EMC, and
EMC, VMware, yeah, and myriad of startups and roll-ups that have rolled up into IBM, PTC. So, yeah.
I also I think we should dive into at some point how a master's in biochemistry helps you with managing partner ecosystems. So,
yeah, that's a good question. All about data and analytics.
Yeah, there you go. Mark Monday. So Mark is Vice President, Global Partner Strategy and Alliances with Sage, and Sage is a longtime, well-known ERP, manager business technology. And Mark, you and I knew each other at SAP a number of years ago. And Mark, your background also is Citrix, Cisco, SAP, VMware.
Yeah, I just collect logos. I want as many logos as possible.
Starting, I think, many years at Microsoft, and I think that's where you and Mike.
Yes, Mike and I go way, way back.
Knew each other. Yeah. So thanks for joining, Mark, and then Mike Moore. Mike is also Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Productive Edge, and Productive Edge is in the healthcare consulting technology business. And Mike, also, you and I met each other a while ago at a Veritech, when you were at a Veritech, and then E2 Open, and most recently at Datto, but long background at Microsoft. And so, gosh, these are, you guys are some real, partnering heavyweights, long history in technology, and this is going to be a fun session. So welcome.
Thank you.
So why don't we let's dive in. So we have a really interesting topic. We're going to be talking about how do you get your entire organization aligned around partnerships, and it's a tough topic. It's one that I think everyone has challenges with at different times because partnering is such a it's a kind of role that you literally have to touch every part of the organization, from from building solutions together and working with product and engineering to, getting those products out into the market, working with marketing and working with your partner's marketing organization to, okay, now you're going to co-sell, you're going to sell with, get your sales organization. You may need finance to help with some funding to get some things done. And then you're working with services. Like, it's literally you're a GM of your own, own organization, and you have to work with every part of the organization. So maybe we start there. I think, we've kind of talked about a few topics that we wanted to cover. And the first was, how do you make partnerships a core part of your company's overall strategy rather than just a nice to have addition? So let me open it up. Anyone want to jump in and let's get started.
Well, if I may, I'll start.
Sure.
Change the language. One of the things that I see is when we start by saying, let's do something around a partner strategy, whoever you're talking to goes to a place in their mind when they met the channel. And that might be in the 80s or the 90s or the early 2000s. And almost invariably, they think of our business. So change the language around what you're talking about. I like to lead with indirect sales or routes to market. Now you're having a different conversation. And that opens up the aperture, because then you can introduce that concept of ecosystem. Sell, build, service, deliver, cross-sell, upsell, influence. Now you're having a different conversation. That would be my suggestion.
Right. No, I think that's really valuable. Coming into a startup where, in my world, alliances and partnerships are fairly new, and you have a very complex technology. So before you even come in, you really want to lay the groundwork of understanding where leadership is and where the value is and what the corporate strategy is. And certainly that is really critical with success. And then there are two levels here, right? One is the executive level and how you scale the business and the messaging and where you have to go. But really, tactically, you've got to make it work. And so, taking a look at the type of partner where you're at, right? And taking a look at who you can partner with as a friendly to prove out the model is really critical. And you're right, it hits all aspects of the business, whether it's product, enablement, certainly sales, front and center, marketing to operations. So you really want to start to prove this out and then start to expand. That has been my approach. And it is, once you have that rolling with, showing how an alliance or partner makes money and how you make money internally to scale the business, that's when you really can start to ramp.
And I think the final point, from my point of view on this, is that it's about personalizing that message, because everyone is inherently self-interested, right? So if Mark or Dana or I come to you and say, it's a partner or it's indirect or whatever the language that we use to kind of personalize it for you, the question is usually inside of someone's head, what does that mean for me and my team? What are you asking me to do? Especially in times like these where everyone already has plenty of work to do, plenty of commitments, plenty of KPIs, whatever they're trying to drive. No one's going out in most cases and looking for new work, right? Like, hey, how can I support another segment or something, right? So I think it's always about coming back to them and trying to help shape up quickly what it means for them, both from an upside, like what's the benefit, and what's the contribution that you need from them or their team to support whatever it is you're trying to do. So let me give an example. Here at Productive Edge, we're a channel partner. So I've spent most of my career on the brand side of things, building brand programs like Mark and Dana and others, and learned a lot doing that. But I started in the partner channel. Now I'm back in the partner channel. And so from our team here, the executive team decided, let's go fund a position. Let's have a VP of partners come in and do this. So we had some alignment around that. And that was what was the genesis for the role. But when I go to our consultants, what does it mean for them to partner? How do we get them aligned around it? A lot of it is training and certifications. I want to offer them professional development opportunities. Go get certified in Microsoft, Google, Amazon, whatever the technology is. It's going to improve their resume and their experience. We're also going to offer them financial incentives to do that. So did they want to help us partner? Yes, because there's a direct benefit for them personally when they participate in our partnerships.
So I love that. 3 really great answers. So change the language, right? So change the language, change the perspective, and broaden the scope of what you're how you're thinking about partnerships. Dana, I love your prove it out. Just start small and show how it show the positive impact. And Mike, I also like your sort of personalize the message to the audience, the internal audience that you're talking to, and show how it benefits them. Uh, uh, any other thoughts on this?
Maybe I'll add two.
Yeah.
There's two things that I find almost always open up the conversation, and Dana kind of alluded to it, and Mike was as well. But when you think about it, we should always start with the customer. I know it sounds pretty basic, and it's kind of a little bit of a platitude, but literally start with the customer, and then do the math. What you'll find is the math actually proves it out. Make your finance business partner or your CFO your best friend. When you start to show them math over time, it is a really great return on investment and a lower cost to serve almost invariably. So start with the customer, meet the customer where they are with an entity that they trust today. That's my big pitch. And then work with your finance business partner to prove the math out. Once the math works, then when you're going around the organization, then you're not getting any pushback because you're like, this is good for the company.
Right. I completely agree. And I'm a process person for sure. And I have to put it down on paper. I have to have my high, my low, where I can accelerate, where I don't. I love pivot tables. So you really have to do your homework and show everyone the money and how they win. No, so the customer, going back internally, partner, the internal teams. So it really is a, you got to manage this process carefully, because our goal is to sell to our alliances and partners who sell marketplace so that they can win, and everyone wins within that channel.
So the only addition I'll make to what Mark and Dana have said is the next business partner that I try to line up internally once finance is on board with something is legal or legal/compliance. And that's just an important piece, because when you start to anticipate the objections that others in the organization might have, right? If the kind of the overall mission here is aligning around partnering, and you start to anticipate what are some of the typical objections that come up internally or roadblocks that might present themselves, there's always a legal and compliance, especially just again in today's day and age and the things that we're trying to do, whether it's privacy or data or whatever the concerns might be. We serve healthcare customers, as Chip mentioned at the top. So there's a high degree of compliance required in this industry, and providers like us who work with payers, providers, healthcare systems, all of that. So if you've got your legal team on board supporting the things that you're trying to do, or finding those ways to help get things done, right? So you're kind of dealt with whatever hand in terms of the legal team that's in place for your organization. Are they a legal team that helps you figure out how to get the business done, or are they part of the team that's putting up the blockers? In either event, you need to figure out how do you align them with this strategy and help take down some of those obstacles and find the path towards getting things done. Otherwise, you'll never launch any partnerships. You'll never land anything in market if you've got those internal blockers up inside.
How about leadership? I think Mike, you mentioned it briefly, just because it's a new role that's been defined at Productive Edge, and I think that's a topic that usually comes up around this question, like a sort of a top down, like, hey, if your CEO understands and supports and sort of incorporates it into their message, it starts to get into everybody's head, that this is important as well.
Yeah, I think it's the things that I've learned over the last couple of years that are really important to qualify, especially for people who are in this line of work. If you're going and talking to a company about, especially a new role, or if it's an existing role and it's become vacant for one reason or another, and you're interviewing for it, I think it's really important to understand what are those expectations, and when and how might they have been formed, right? So sometimes, you might work for an executive, maybe it's a CRO or a CEO or whomever, and they may have set a set of expectations based on their experience at a prior company and their work with Microsoft, Amazon, Google, you name one of the bigger players in the industry. you may be in a completely different situation, and those expectations are not like they shouldn't be the same in kind of what your present situation is. So you've got to figure out, can I get them here? Of kind of like, my assessment of the situation is different. We should have our expectations, lowered or whatever, or adjusted here. So I think expectations and kind of what does success look like for partnering and getting that alignment as an organization, and what we're going to be able to deliver and contribute, and in what time frame. Because that's the kicker with all of this stuff, is that there isn't an endless runway for delivering results. We all have metrics we're trying to deliver in the short term and the long term. Depending on the type of partnerships and the channels through which you work, the time frame through which you are able to align the organization and deliver that may be realistic or not. And quite frankly, we've all got a comp plan. You're looking at the comp plan that's proposed to you for your role. Are you going to be able to deliver in the time frame, or is this too far out that you're never going to get there, and therefore your own earnings are going to suffer, and you're never going to deliver for the organization? And so, there's always kind of that career moment reconciliation. Mark knows all too well about this, because when I have these kind of questions and that I'm thinking through, he's a friend that I call and ask for advice on this. Now Dana will be as well, now that we've met. But these are the kind of things that I think you always have to reconcile organizationally. Like, people can say they're on board and yeah, let's partner and all this stuff, but a group that many of us are a part of called Partnership Leaders, I talked to a lot of people through that group who they ran out of runway, right? CEO thought we're going to be able to get some stuff done sooner, got impatient, decided to pull the funds from the role, pull it back, let's go more direct, right? It's an all too common scenario, unfortunately, for people in our line of work.
Right. I think that's a really important point. There is a certain runway. And what I do, my approach has been, because we have really a new category, a talent intelligence platform to address talent challenges, right? New category, new information, new to partners, right? Very complex, complex solution in the marketplace. And so with our leadership, there's a strong channel, right? I mean, there's constant information going back and forth, whether it's about GSIs like a Deloitte, Accenture, PwC, to, boutiques. And then also on the VADVAR side, which is where we play, the SAPs of the world, the hyperscalers, the other SaaS players, right? So there's a lot of education and communication. I try and bring my leadership into as many meetings as possible, one, so that they have exposure and there's mutual beneficial really exchange. And then it goes back to exactly what Mike has said, right? So what are you trying to accomplish? What's the value? What's the metric? What's the time frame in which you need to accomplish this? Because once again, we are managing a business almost like as a GM. So
yeah, so, and I think timeline is really important. Setting the right expectations and making sure that you're aligned on that, so that you're not thinking, oh, this is going to take us 6 months to get rolling, and the CEO is thinking, oh, where are we?
And you get those questions anyway, even if you do the expectations.
Yeah, that's a life lesson you only learn once, which is, when you're doing BD and you sign a big contract with a new partner, you don't say a word. You only say a word when you've booked some deals.
Get the first deal.
If you say, hey, I just signed this amazing contract with this partner, it's going to be wonderful. The first phone call you're going to get the next day is, how many orders did you get?
Yeah.
So don't say anything. Wait till you book some deals, and then you tell everybody.
Yeah,
that's
good.
Agree with that. Hard won advice, I'm sure, Mark.
Yes. Yes. I used to have lush, beautiful hair. I was much taller as well.
So terrific conversation already. Love everybody's thoughts. Why don't we let's think about a next topic, which is kind of related, but maybe we'll dive a little bit more into it. So the question we thought about is, how do you build cross-functional partnerships within your company, and what impact does that have on the external partnerships? So we've talked a lot about sort of the need and the and how important it is, but how do you do it? How do you build relationships internally in the organization?
I think Mike nailed it. I mean, you literally do have to have a value prop and a message for each audience. And Chip, you started by saying engineering, product marketing, marketing, brand, sales, services, upsell, operations, etc. Each one of them have goals and objectives. And instead of coming to them and saying, here's something really complicated, which is what we tend to do, because it is, we should come to them and say, we can make your business better, faster, stronger, cheaper, whatever that looks like. And here's some detail that we can handle for you to help you get there. Too often, I think what we do is we show up with our bag of 30 years of legacy complexity, and then it seems really hard. It needs to look like a duck on the water, super smooth when you're talking to them, just gliding across that idyllic New England lake. You can see the leaves in the background. Underneath, the feet are going furiously. Rather than starting with complexity, start with simplicity. I'll give you a great example. One example. Partners are just a data source for a marketer. Just a data source. How much do you pay for MQLs? Oh, we pay a lot for MQLs. $800 for MQL, $700 for MQL. Oh, we might, for a real qualified lead, we might pay $2,000 for lead. Okay, well, that's pretty expensive. Let me show you another way to get as good or maybe a better lead. Oh, great. I'm excited now. So that's a way you can shift that angle of attack a little bit.
Yeah.
I had an experience when I left Microsoft and went to GE Healthcare, and it was a similar kind of thing, like starting a marketing role specifically focused on channel partners and trying to scale. And I realized that there were, again, a lot of different definitions, a lot of different vernacular about kind of partnering and those things, and a lot of differences in terms of the understanding of the scope of what it is we were trying to do. And so in terms of driving alignment, I put together what I just called the walking deck. And we put in the beginning of the walking deck the ORPE, RACI, whatever kind of model you would subscribe to, owner, approver, reviewer, participant, informed, right? Those kind of things. You just kind of explain by functional area, where we saw everyone fitting in, and obviously that was guided by the executives who'd brought us in. But then use this walking deck to essentially read in the different groups around the company, right? Like, here's the scope of what we're doing. Here is, again, kind of to my earlier comment, here's what we think the contribution is from you and your team. Here are the impacts we're trying to make and in the time frame that we're trying to do it. And here's kind of the next step. So we went through a process and tried to get everyone read in, because ultimately, when you go back to the CEO or whomever of the business, they're going to ask, who have you talked to about this? What was their reaction? What was their response? What did you ask them to do? What did they agree to? And so we use that walking deck as a process to document all of that and bring everyone together. And then obviously iterate the walking deck. It wasn't a static document. It was living, breathing. We used the feedback from each discussion to improve it. But then, we tend to have this proliferation of slideware, especially in organizations, and documents, and all the stuff gets generated. And right, so there was one deck, right? Literally the one deck. And that was, a chapter of the story, right? So that's at the beginning of the process. We use it for a certain amount of kind of governance and guidance as we go through the rest of it, because otherwise people get distracted. They hear different versions of the story. Not everybody feels aligned, but that was a tool that we were using to try to make sure that everybody stayed on track. And again, there was some negotiation as part of each one of those conversations.
And how often were you having those conversations?
Well, we set a time frame for ourselves because of what we were trying to do. So there was an existing channel, small channel with some kind of lock-in agreements. We were trying to unlock those agreements, open it up, recruit more partners, sign a distributor, and launch marketing programs, bring in MDF, right? So there was a whole set of things we had signed up for in that fiscal year. So therefore we had to get cracking. So we gave ourselves kind of like, here's the briefing window. Everybody read in on the walking deck, check, move it and kind of phase it out and make it very process oriented. These are things now that I talk a bit about in kind of my conversations, either one-to-one or partnership leaders and those things, about my use of ChatGPT. It's a very useful tool in kind of nailing a lot of basic templates for partnering. And so if you don't know what I'm talking about with a walking deck or an ORPE model or RACI or those kind of things, these are quick hits. Like, give me a slide structure for a walking deck for a new partner program or those kind of things. It'll build it out for you and kind of tell you the sections. You go put that into PowerPoint or Google Slides, right? Kind of give me a project plan for how I can do these kind of things within a 6-month time period. So it's all good stuff to stub out, and then you actually personalize what the generative AI tools can give you and make it actually suit your situation and what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
I think that is an excellent point as far as how you want to processize this. And I think that's really, really important to where you want to go. And talking to Mark's point too, really important. I mean, you don't want to get ahead of yourself and commit to something you can't deliver, right, with partnerships. But once you do deliver, I think it's really important to really showcase the team who has been involved, right?
Mhm.
So one, you're taking a look at how do they win, and then you want to showcase it, right? Because people want that, right? To have an inside out perspective here, well, I'll bring on voice of the field, the product, even voice of finance or operations, really fundamental, so that they have a platform to say, hey, I was part of this, because it is a team sport completely. So I think going back to the metrics and showcasing and platforming that on the back end is really important, because I always find internal communications is probably the most challenging piece, one of the most challenging pieces to this role, whether it's internally to you or internally to an alliance or partner, of how you want to communicate, where you want to communicate the win, and how to do it. So,
I love that point,
that's
Dana.
such an important nugget.
Yeah, it builds a
Sorry, go ahead.
communication plan. Treat them like a marketing audience, right? Like, what is the cadence through which I'm going to come back to you and brief you, right? Mark,
right.
I have a feeling you were going the same direction there.
No, Dana nailed it. I mean, it is a team sport. We talked already, product marketing, engineering, marketing, operations. You do your first big win, everybody gets kudos, not the partner account manager.
Absolutely.
Everybody. It took a village to get there.
Right.
And then everyone, when people feel part of it, we know when we feel like we're part of something, we want to do more, help. It's the perfect point to make.
And by the way, Mark, while you're on, Neil Bleckerman had a comment about your wait till you book a deal for setting the right expectations, right?
And it's not only
I'm telling you, that one has burned me many, many times.
Right. By the way, it's not only your first one. You've got to get the second and the third, and then you can start to talk about consistency.
In fact, sorry, Dana. In fact, what I do is I don't count a partner recruited until I've booked a material amount of deals. When we launched Office 365, it was 3. When I was at VMware, it was 5. I'm now saying it's almost 10. To have a recruited, activated partner with a practice, it might be 10 deals. Dana, you're so right.
For me, like it's about repeatability, and all partners have their own culture. So how do you, I don't want to say retrofit, but how do you interlock with them effectively to have that repeatability, right? And that's always discussions, because there's always going to be, politics and other dynamics going on. But how do you drive that forward effectively for repeatability?
For sure.
So a question here that's come in from the audience, which I think is relevant right now. What's your guidance on publishing your work? And Jeff, I'm not sure exactly what you're thinking of in terms of publishing, whether that's sort of, we've been talking about, like Mike was talking about, having a standard deck that the partner organization uses and kind of has those conversations with different parts of the organization. So Jeff just says internally, so that's great. So any thoughts on this, whether it might be, sort of publishing in a Slack channel or, and like an internal communication newsletter? Any thoughts about that?
I would say 2 things. 1, over communicate and under complexify. We have a tendency to complexify.
I like that word, complexify.
We tend to make it really look hard. We almost sit there with our wizard hats on and saying, we know the magic to do partnering and it's this complicated thing. And then they're like, well, wait, I don't understand how it's. Over communicate, here's what's going on, and then simplify instead of complexifying. And keep at it and keep at it and keep at it. Where you see it fall down is when you made it too complicated and you don't tell people what's happening.
Well, and just to add on from a data perspective with that, a lot of reporting when you get into business reviews, there's always the question of what's the source of the data? And channel people, because so much of our business exists outside of the walls of the brand, right? Like internal, like, if it's channel versus direct, your direct team has the benefit of they have the marketing automation stack, they have the CRM, they have all this wonderful data. I took it for granted a long time when we were at Microsoft, Mark and many others that we worked with, we had MS sales, which was, 3 levels of, data about, we could go down to the end customer and tell you what they bought, who they bought it through, which distributor served it up, and everything in between. Most organizations don't have that. So when you go to a lot of teams, we know channel exists outside of our walls. They may use, if we're talking reseller distribution, cloud distribution, like a Pax8 or somebody like that, there's varying levels of data there. As much as you can choose mainstream, I'll use air quotes, data sources, so that you are like the direct team and you can position your channel pipeline, your channel marketing contribution, whatever it happens to be, using mainstream sources of data that look like the direct team, you have more credibility when you're in those internal discussions. And just kind of citing your data source, the filters that were applied, the time period for which you've examined or whatever, however that goes into your content, to Jeff's question about publishing, to me, that's a piece that just, again, it's all about credibility and want to show command and control the channel business as much as anybody can claim that, right? The reality is, it's out of control, inherently it's built into the model somewhat because you're using the channel. My other guidance for Jeff, though, is I do like having a Slack channel. Like I talked earlier about that certification initiative that I'm running here for our associates. I created a Slack channel called Get Certified. Anytime anyone in the organization earns a certification, it gets posted there for the public kudos, right? Like every little step we take forward helps the organization. When we hit bigger milestones, I promote it there too. But those are the little bits, and it's the consistency and not doing a good one shot and then you orphan that communication channel. So that comes back to your communication plan, like we mentioned before. If you don't know how to create one, ask ChatGPT and it will stub one out for you, and then just stick with it, put the calendar reminders on, and follow that rhythm to your business and make sure you're putting the updates out. You may have to be creative some months because maybe not a lot has happened. You signed some new partners, but they haven't delivered deals. Okay, what else are you doing to try to fill that time and do productive things that will lead to the deals being delivered? So you have to sometimes be creative in your storytelling, but that's the kind of stuff that you can, just keep on chipping away at and show the team what you're doing to accomplish the mission that you've all set off on.
Yeah, I
Terrific.
agree with both, particularly Mark, of the over communicate and the simplification. Particularly when you have direct sellers who are just learning about partners, and maybe a third of them get it, a third of them are on the fence, and a third of them may not ever get it and want to get it, right? And so, what we've done internally is, whether it's Google Drives or Confluence or using specific tools, but also it's once again going back to the over communication. And it's so timely you said that, because we have a best practices on partnering to our all hands meeting for our sellers, and the questions that you get, we kept it to very simple slides, like, what do? You call the here's what you do. It's very, very simple. And then, you want to start off obviously with, here's what's in it for you and how you can win in different ways to win. So I completely agree with that. In some situations too, with my alliances and partners, we create a lot of firewalls because of competitive, differentiation. And one partner may want to do an M&A, so partner may want to do a resource management, extensibility, which is, incredibly important to products and places you have no right to go or want to go, right? And so you've also, what I found is with communication channels, I find that with specific types of partners, you create very strong firewalls. It's kind of like the worst thing you want to do is get into a room, and when you walk out of the room, someone's talking about you. So you really want to be careful, I think, with some partners with communication channels.
Fantastic, great conversation. And Jeff, thank you for your question. I think it sparked some additional interesting discussions. So here's a topic that I think will be really interesting. You've done you've done sort of your communication plan. You've been communicating. You've been connecting with a lot of the parts of the organization. But there's one part of the organization or one person that is just sort of not bought in, or just not a believer, or they're kind of a detractor. How do you manage and how do you work through that kind of challenge? Any thoughts?
Well, I had this situation happen exactly. So I'll expose my warts, from my career journey here. So, I'd spent a long time at Microsoft, and, there was a shared understanding of kind of how we got things done. And, even people who were new to Microsoft, we all kind of got it. And then I left and went to GE Healthcare and a specific business unit that was focused on healthcare IT. They've been through many challenges, many acquisitions. It's done 16 or 17 acquisitions that came together into this business unit. Had a professional services team, and now I show up and I'm supposed to help scale the channel. And where do you get channel readiness in a company like that? Well, professional services team has a lot of experience. But then I learned that they had just been through some cuts and were trying to kind of hold on to their territory as much as they could. And so I sat with a services leader at the time, and they said, not only am I not going to help you, right? We've been through cuts, and you're trying to eat, my lunch. I'm trying to put, dinner on the table, whatever kind of metaphors I'm mixing here, right? Like they basically put up the stone wall. And so the way that I attempted to deal with that situation was to try to figure out a creative way that we could all win in that situation. So yes, he needed to lead. He needed to try to find more project work for his team. What I tried to dig into and understand was how do we differentiate between the work that you do and what you want to do for clients versus what our channel partners might pick up? How do you maybe take a more senior architect level view of things and let them kind of do the grunt work that maybe you and your team don't want to do, right? So it's trying to be creative and negotiate with them, and not just kind of, I could have run into the brick wall, just shut it down and gone. I could have gone to the executive team who hired me and said, like, you got to deal with this, right? Because this is not what I tried to do, is to work collaboratively. Because the other thing is, a lot of channel people, we tend to be kind of big hat, no cattle kind of roles. So you don't have direct authority over people. But it's that kind of peer impact and influence skill set that we all work very hard on in the channel, and figuring out, okay, how do I take down the walls? How do I align on the same time with on the same side with these people? How do I figure out how do I make a win for what it is? And so it's a lot of empathy and understanding, and kind of working collaboratively together to figure out how you do it. Sometimes you'll never find it. It's just not there. It doesn't exist. Sometimes the person has a reason, a vendetta, a grudge, whatever, not personal to you. It's about the situation, the company, whatever, that you can't overcome. But most of the time, I found that if you take the time and try to align on the same side of the table with them, you'll be able to find some sort of compromise.
Good. Yeah. Mark?
So my observation, I've been on this planet for a number of years, that generally humans do want to work together. And if the company goals are aligned and the product strategy is aligned and you're getting pushback, 99 times out of 100, it's not because they're a jerk. It's because they don't get it. You've not explained it to them well enough. Dana made a wonderful point at the beginning. Explaining it is the trick. And that's why I get so focused on taxonomy and language. But Dana made a wonderful point. Some people are very visual. One of the most impactful ways that I've used to solve it for people is, if they're a data person, I bring it to them in data. If they're a PowerPoint person, I bring it to them in PowerPoint. And then there's also just this simple thing of drawing it, like a child almost, hand drawing it for simplicity, and then not labeling everything. I'm talking about this segment of customers. What words would you use, person who's struggling with this concept, to describe this? And here's 3 step functions I think that happen, but I'm not sure. What language would you use there? Now you're not arguing. You're actually working on a piece of paper together to draw a plan of what it could look like. That is an incredibly effective exercise. It requires you to bring the phasers down, to be humble, and then let them participate rather than you being the wizard with the channel hat trying to cast a spell on them.
I like that. It's about empathy, right? It's about understanding where they're coming from and trying to translate.
It's
Anna,
also
you
just,
were.
I completely agree. It's
Mhm.
about getting your hands dirty and showing people how to make it work, and then putting them in the sunlight if you can do that, right? And I feel like you, the majority of people out there want to do the right thing and move things forward. There may be some outliers, and you can try and work on a one-on-one. It may or may not work, but you may want to surround that situation to win with other people to create momentum. When I was at EMC, I came into a role where I was leading global marketing for the GSIs and SOs, right? And it was a business that was all over the place. And they brought in a very strong leader, happened to be the TMT leader from Accenture. And it became a huddle group every single day to grow this business. And EMC, as you know, is very much was a direct selling organization before it rolled up into Dell. Very different dynamic today, but within 3 years, right, understanding the politics and where we can win and where we scale, we grew the business from $500 million to $3 billion, over $3 billion. So that was an organizational structure. Now bring it down to the tactical level, where some people may or may not want to participate, right? And you just have to figure out, okay, is this worth it or not? Or how do you work around it? How do you show the sunshine and make them win? I agree, the wizard is not going to work. You would never ask someone to do something that you wouldn't do yourself. So you really got to get your hands dirty as you start to build a foundation for alliances and partners. So those are just some of my experiences.
Excellent. Any other thoughts on this topic? Hey, so we have a few other topics to talk about. I think one that it could be really interesting is so you're communicating, you're sort of working, getting the word out, getting people aligned, helping to try and manage some potential detractors. How do you measure? How do you measure when you're successful? How do we know that we've been able to be successful?
Well, I think I wrote a blog article about this a couple of years ago, but essentially, my belief is that you don't ask your leadership to write your scorecard KPIs, right? We are the channel professionals. We understand the segment of the business that we're driving. We know what are the metrics that move the needle and those that don't. And so I think when you put yourself in a situation where you ask your leadership team, who, as I said, they may be channel people and they get it, they may not be. But if you're asking someone else to write your scorecard for you, good luck measuring up, right? So I think it's an opportunity for you to educate the organization about when we are aligned around channel partners, when we are moving in the right direction, here are the signals that we'll know. Here are kind of the leading and the lagging indicators of performance, right? Here are the things that will help us understand what's happening and if we're on the right track, both in the short and the long term.
Mhm.
And then getting alignment and conversation around that, and then codifying that, and then again, it's kind of the communication plan, like having the standard rhythm through which we come back where you revisit those metrics, right? So never establish a metric that you can't report on, right? They have to be things that you can collect data and report on. Have a good pivot table, to Dana's point, right? Like we all love a good pivot that's going to show us that and give us that insight. So make sure that it's achievable things that you can put out there as those KPIs. And then again, bring everybody back, connect them back to your story, to Mark's point about some people are data oriented, some are visual, some are story, right? I think you bring it back to you. How does this data, how does this KPI connect back to the story point of what, again, the mission is that we're all driving, and how is it leading us to the performance? What are those specific KPIs of, in most cases, they're not going to be things that are different than what you'd expect. Their revenue, their marketing metrics, a lot of thing with channel partners is kind of one foot in front of the other kind of metrics, right? Like, well, the partner didn't deliver deals. Well, clearly, right? If they're not creating pipeline and registering deals around that, right? It's an opportunity management kind of piece of it. Then we're not going to see, you know, revenue unless maybe things drop out of the sky. So Miguel, who asked a question here, I don't know if this is a plant or not, Chip, but he's saying, how can an app like Workspan accelerate adoption of alliances? So we're onboarding with Workspan now. So I'll disclose that we are. We'll pay an invoice, I think, once we go live here. But we're onboarding now because part of what I'm trying to do is reduce the friction, particularly in our Microsoft alliance, of doing deal reg. You know, our sales folks are working very hard doing deals, multiple deals with each customer. I want to make it easy to share that information with Microsoft. I want to disclose that earlier in the process. Workspan's a tool that's going to help give us an easy, frictionless way to just manage deals in Salesforce like we do today. Click a couple of things, magically it goes through Workspan, gets registered in the Microsoft Partner Center, keeps the Microsoft team in the loop as that deal advances through the sales stages. So that, you know, collects more proof around it and kind of more data around it. And through that, I'm going to have a Workspan dashboard I can show our executive team that rolls all of that information up.
Those are excellent points. I also would add one more piece that I think is really important as you start to launch, and that is the investment that you're making, the investment that the alliance or partner are making to see if you're hitting your milestones. And, you know, as a young organization, you're not going to have all that alignment and hard metrics, and you're getting there to be able to measure it. But I think that's an important piece. And as you mature, I always like to run a P&L for my business. That is something that, you know, whether you're at someone like at the point in time with EMC or VMware, having the P&L will make you much more disciplined and also show the business, the growth, the viability, and where you need to go to invest more. So just adding on to what Mike said.
Maybe I'll chime in with a metaphor. So oftentimes, here's what I see. The chief sales officer, chief revenue officer, they've got a sports car at the start line of a race, and they're looking at the speedometer and the tachometer. The channel people are building a factory to go produce cars. They're different. There are KPIs and OKRs to build a production car in a factory that are different than the race car. Oftentimes what you see is the sales leaders are looking at their direct sales team as the engine's revved, gassed up, ready to go. And so I recommend really opening up the aperture on time and focusing on OKRs and KPIs, trained people, certified people, available people, demand generation in a market, lead generation, lead qual, MQLs. All of that stuff is really important because oftentimes a sales leader might be just looking at sales metrics, but most of what you're going to be doing are going to be around enablement and marketing metrics. And so opening up that aperture, now you can have a little bit more of an apples to apples comparison. If you get stuck in that trap of just focusing on revenue in year one, it's not going to look great. You have to show that you're building a factory. Ray Dalio calls it build the machine, that you're building a machine. And then over time, you'll have a car that can be on that same track.
That is a great analogy. I look at that and I say, okay, how do you want to do that? How do you get buy-in for that? Right. And so that's part of the magic. I shouldn't say magic, but those are part of the metrics that you have to show. And that goes back to the communication aspect of where you have to go, right? Because you don't want an alliance or a partner to be one and done. You want to go to market where you have different motions, right? Whether it's a sell with, sell through, and all the variations of sell through and sell to. You really want to consume that for go to market. And that's where you're building the factory. That's exactly where you want to go. Thank you. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Mike, I don't think Miguel is a plant, but appreciate your thoughts there, and excited to be working with you guys. So.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it is a good consideration, I think, as we're getting, towards the end here, like, what are the tools that you can use that can help you automate? Like Dana talked a lot about process. Those are important considerations, right? There are tools that are out there that, and this is a segment that I worked in for a bit in my time in the industry. There are tools that help you kind of professionalize the game of channel. to operationalize it, to establish the processes, the metrics, the reporting, the dashboards. I think it's worth investigating and investing in those kind of tools to help you. Again, running a professional business, your direct side, they have a lot of tools and a lot of investment typically in systems and tools to get there. You know, it's an important piece to consider for you and how you build out your channel business. And to the the picture that I had of kind of the race car at the line and the factory, that also goes back to the alignment piece we talked at the beginning, right? Like, shows how misaligned you can be with your execs if you're not talking about it. But also, you don't build a factory. Like, we tend to be very, thrifty New Englanders here, right? Like, kind of, well, we'll figure out how to get it done. And it's like, yeah, but I've got zero investment. How can I build a factory out of sand, right? Like, can't do it, need some machinery, got to have some investment. So it is a good point, again, about kind of looking for the ways that you can have the tools and processes to run your business. Obviously, you can't do $1 billion factory build out on day one. You've got to kind of earn it a piece by piece to build out the factory, one tool at a time or one system at a time. But that's and show results, to the earlier point, right? But those are the kind of things that I wouldn't feel shy asking for. And that'd be a huge red flag if you're going to work for an organization that's not willing to invest in those things.
Awesome, Mike. And I love hearing your dog in the background chiming in. He's got something to say. He or she has something to say.
I'm trying to keep 2 golden doodles happy for an hour. At least I got the landscaper to come another time, but I'm doing my best, Chip. So sorry about little Charlie there.
Yeah, no worries. So this has been a fantastic session, and I'm looking a little bit at the clock. Maybe we'll just do a quick round robin. Any sort of last minute piece of advice that each of you would have for, and we've covered a lot of it, but any other thoughts around, aligning with your organization, and any just sort of, golden nuggets?
I'll go back to the beginning a little bit. The reality is we know that 70-80% of customer buying decisions are made digitally before they hit your pipeline at the top of your funnel. We're in a marketing business. And Mike Moore has written the book on channel marketing, literally. Marketing is the key to our real success because everyone is looking for more at-bats. And we don't even know sometimes when we're getting qualified in or qualified out based upon the way the customer's searching. So more data sources, more ways to meet the customer where they are with an entity that they trust digitally is key.
Right. And just to add on that, or just to expand, once again, when we talked about this, it's knowing your customer, right? What's going to make them go? Where do they win? And it's also being able to walk in the shoes of your partner to figure out your alliance, to understand how they win as well. Right. So it's really understanding the landscape for us to make this go, and understanding where the maturity of where you are and how you, once again, go to that, build out that factory with proof points along the way.
And I think as hard as you work on trying to align inside of your organization, if you can think about your partners and how they drive alignment in their organization, because aligning around partnering as a business model is one thing. Aligning around partnering with your specific company for each of your channel partners is not a foregone conclusion. And so thinking about how you build that into your partner program so that you help drive that alignment. And so what does that mean? It means speaking to the audience within the organization. So if you want to partner with me in your Sage or your Eightfold or your Microsoft or anybody else, what's the value prop that I can take to my CEO, right? I'm the partner leader here. So give me something I can take to my CEO, my CFO, my COO, right, on and on, the different roles inside of my organization to get everybody on board that speaks to their needs and why a partnership with your company is going to help us accomplish our goals. We will exist with or without you, right? We will be successful with or without you. We'll be able to be more successful and go faster if we partner with you. Right. So that's got to be part of the calculus for why we would take on a partnership. I'm a one partner person for a good sized organization. We can't have an endless number of partners and do it well. So I've got to be selective about which ones we choose. The ones that we choose to go deep with are going to be the ones that bring the most value to our customers and to the services that we deliver with them. Speak to that and you're going to catch our attention. You're going to earn the partnership. If you're not helping to address it and just treating us like another number or another row in a spreadsheet, it's not going to happen.
Great point, Mike, and Charlie agrees. Hey, thank you all. This has been fantastic, wonderful conversation, and really valuable. I love the questions that have come up as well. And gosh, I think that's all I've got to say. Mike, Dana, Mark, thank you guys for joining.
Thank you, Chip.
Yeah.
Thank you, Aces. How appropriate. I'm in Vegas.
That's by the way, as we were talking, I was looking around the panel and I realized, okay, we're all senior, partner and marketing executives. And did you notice we're all wearing glasses? I think that's it's just a sign of what happens, right?
It's
Here we
either a
are.
sign of age or wisdom, Chip. I don't know which.
I love
Nice.
the sage. Love the sage green, Mark.
Yeah, Chip, I want to thank you too. I feel like I have two fabulous new colleagues and, building upon the vast network. So thank you.
Awesome. And I also reiterate what Mike's point in the middle, talking about partnership leaders, great community and great place to connect with other leaders and learn and share, and a bunch of templates and ideas and concepts, and ask questions. And the Slack channels are very active, and events as well. So
yeah,
with Catalyst coming up in Denver in August. So, okay. So thank you guys. Great panel. Fantastic. And thank you all for joining. And I think with that, we'll sign off and say, see you next time. Thanks, guys.